I had the pleasure of meeting Nicky now 3 or 4 times. And Nicky, if you could just start by saying where you're from and how you got involved with this tonight.
Hello, I'm Nicky Gill. I'm a resident of Henley Brook, and I got involved with this because a developer came along and had protected wetlands rezoned from special rural to urban, going to fill 233 hectares with 160 to 500 square metre blocks. That was one thing, but when the area was rezoned 2 years ago, the 5-acre property owners who did not want to develop, wanted to stay on their land, were given the assurance by the Minister and the Planning Commission that they would still have full use of their property, nothing would change for them. It just gave those who wanted to develop the opportunity to develop. However, when the structure plan came out, those residents who wanted to remain on property have had POS sites or public open space sites marked over their homes.
Nicky, when you told me this, I didn't quite understand it, to be honest. So I played it back to myself, and I just want to play it back to you to make sure I understand this correctly. Let's say this oval, and it's a site many times this size, but let's say this oval is owned by 4 different families.
Yep.
Somebody's gone up and bought, say, half of it.
Yep.
And said, look, we want to do a rezone and chop the oval up into 300 square metre blocks.
Yep.
And one family has refused to sell. And so when you do a scheme amendment, you have to have in the scheme amendment public open space.
10%.
So what they've done is they've said, well, those dudes that don't want to sell, that's our public open space.
Yep.
That's then gone to through the planning process, and the planning process says, yep, scheme amendment is approved. So what happens then to the dudes who now used to own residentially zoned property, now own public open space property?
So it actually gets a step worse than this. These people are on 5-acre properties. So when they were not consulted at all about being public open space sites. So they sort of rallied around and they approached the City of Swan Council and said, look, we're happy to sacrifice our paddocks, but could the public open space be moved off of our houses and our building envelope and into our paddocks? The City of Swan said, yes, we agree with you completely. They made a response to the WA Planning Commission, and other residents made deputations saying, please move the public open space sites from the homes to the paddocks so that people can keep their long-term homes that they've had for 30 to 40 years. The WAPC said no. So now those people basically have a stranded asset. When those public open space sites are needed, the City of Swan will make a financial offer. If the people still don't want to move and say, no, we're not accepting the financial offer, compulsory acquisition will begin.
So this is happening in our free country, Australia. A government can come and take your land essentially by rezoning it.
On behalf of a developer.
On behalf of a developer. So thank you for that. Now, the other thing you wanted to mention, I think, was something about the Swan, is it the Swan Valley?
Yes.
Development plan?
There is a new Swan Valley planning bill. Anyone who enjoys going to the Swan Valley, please listen. New Swan Valley planning bill is currently in Parliament. Right now, if you want to develop in the Swan Valley, you have to have approval from the Planning Commission, the City of Swan, and the Swan Valley Planning Committee. Now that's all being done away with. There is a new committee being formed in the WA Planning Commission. They will make all the decisions on development in the Swan Valley. They are 9 members, all chosen from the WA Planning Commission. 2 of those members will represent residents and businesses in the Swan Valley. It is basically a JDAP for the Swan Valley, and they get to approve what they want. It also states that the Swan Valley cannot be developed, cannot be subdivided. It's protected unless a developer puts through a planning structure that is consistent with the orderly planning guidelines of the WA Planning Commission. They could then approve it. So the landowners can't develop, can't do anything, but developers can still develop.
It's unbelievable. But it's the common. We're all learning. You've become a bit of an expert in planning, as we all have. Even looking down at this sign here, it makes me not laugh really. But we've all gone through that process of what's going on here, where are the documents, how does it work, and we come to the same situation where we've got government bureaucrats can just make rules and call it planning, and or sound planning principles, fancy words, and that affects our properties very significantly. So I've got no more questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to say that I haven't asked you about?
No, I mean, I could speak to you for like the next 4 hours, but that's basically the gist of it.
Thank you, Nicky. Thank you.
No problems. Thanks.